I don't know exactly what is the abomination of desolation, but I know the Bible gives us some very striking directives that can help us to have a good understanding of the subject, even if we may not be able to pinpoint exactly what it is. But we can have a pretty good understanding of the parameters of the topic. And that's what I want us to look at this evening. So, I'm going to go ahead and share. I'm going to focus my presentation on my PowerPoint. So, I'll go ahead and share. All right, and we're going to start with the statement that Jesus made. The statement that Jesus made when the reason why, I think the reason why the abomination of desolation is such a matter of interest is because Jesus commented on it specially. And that is why it has become such a fascinating topic, mostly because of what Jesus said. You know, a lot of people take the prophecy of Matthew 24, where Jesus talked about the end times, and they apply a lot of it to the last days. But I think most of us understand that it was a dual prophecy. It was a prophecy that had reference to the destruction of Jerusalem and also to the last days. And that a lot of what happened in the destruction of Jerusalem is to be replicated in the last days. So let me just start by actually looking at Jesus' prophecy and explaining what I mean. I'm just going to glance at a few things that will help us to understand what I'm trying to say. So Matthew 24 is where the prophecy is. And the prophecy begins because the disciples come and they show Jesus the buildings of the temple. And Jesus says, do you see all these things? I'm telling you, there will not be left one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. So, this is where the prophecy starts. So, later on, he sits down upon the Mount of Olives, and the disciples come to him saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? They ask him for about three things. Tell us, first of all, when will these things happen? Which things? When the temple is thrown down and not one stone left upon another? When will these things be? And they are certain that this must be at the end of the world. So they go on to add to the question and they say, and what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? So there are at least two, maybe three different questions in their sentence. So first of all, they want to know, when will these things be? They're asking about the destruction of the temple and of Jerusalem. They think that will be the end of the world. But Jesus knows better. And then they ask, what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the world? These are two different events, separated by vast numbers of years. The destruction of Jerusalem was 2,000 years ago. The end of the world, 2,000 years later, is still not yet. So, Jesus is putting everything into one prophecy. And so, Jesus goes on to talk about, many will come in my name, say I am Christ, will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Don't be troubled, for the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Remember when he says, when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, the end is not yet. So that is not a sign of the end. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Famines, earthquakes, pestilences in different places. These are also not the sign of the end, because he says, these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to be afflicted, shall kill you. You shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. This is what happened in the first century, in that first Christian, in the early Christian church. And then he kind of combined the signs of both things in one. Many false prophets shall rise, shall deceive many. But a lot of what he's saying here had to do with the destruction of Jerusalem, just before Jerusalem was destroyed. So he says now, and this is it, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Now, does this have to do with the destruction of Jerusalem or with the end of the world? Well, it's very clear that he's referring primarily to the destruction of Jerusalem, because he says, then let them which are in Judea flee into the mountains. He's talking about when Jerusalem was destroyed. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, and pray that your flight is not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. So he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. And it is in this context that he says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Now he says something interesting. He says, whoso readeth, let him understand. What he's saying is that this prophecy that I'm talking about, it requires special discernment. You're not going to just read it and understand. So, he makes this comment for a reason. When you read the book of Daniel, you read about the abomination of desolation. And you are going to see that standing in the holy place. But I'm telling you, the person who is reading what? Reading the book of Daniel. When you are reading the book of Daniel, let him understand. You need a certain amount of understanding. And so, the key to understanding this abomination of desolation, it lies somewhere in the book of Daniel. So I'm going to use my PowerPoint to highlight some of the main points that I want to focus on. So first of all, there's this statement of Jesus, and we will take our time and go through. So the first thing I want to highlight in this statement is, first of all, that Jesus says the abomination of desolation would stand in the holy place. It's going to stand in a certain place. It's not just the abomination of desolation, but it's the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. This is important, and I'm going to come back to this. All right, but for the moment, I just want to point it out. But I said we'll come back to this. So, let's look at the prophecy in Daniel. And I'm going to tell you that the prophecy of the abomination of desolation, it appears in the book of Daniel in about 3 different places, at least 3 different places. Maybe more than 3 places, but I'm going to look at least 3 different places, because I'd like us to understand that there are 3 different abomination of desolation, and they are not all stated in the same way. That's why Jesus says, let him who reads understand. So the first time the prophecy appears in the book of Daniel is actually Daniel 9, verses 26 to 27. So let me give you the context of this passage. First of all, let's look at Daniel 9. I just want you to get the background of what we are looking at. Daniel 9. You remember what happened here? The angel came to explain to Daniel what would happen to the people after Daniel had been praying and fasting, what would happen to the Jews. And then he says, I have now come forth to give you understanding. Now he said, we went through this prophecy. 70 weeks were cut off for the Jews and the holy city, Jerusalem, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. But the point I want to highlight here, of course we believe this is a prophecy concerning Jesus Christ. The point I want to highlight here, it says in verse 26, I'm going to read verses 26 and 27. And after 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off. We're talking about the death of Jesus. But not for himself. He's not going to die. He was not to die for himself. He was to die for the sins of the people. And the people of the prince that shall come, who was the prince that would come? It was the Roman prince, Titus. The Roman prince Titus. Now, after Jesus died, then the Roman armies came. It may seem like a long time afterwards, but in prophetic time, it's a short time. They actually came something like about 36 years later. The Romans came. They shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. And the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Now notice something. I'm going to show you a few things that are mentioned here that I'd like to keep in mind. It mentions that the city would be destroyed. The sanctuary would be destroyed. Very important. And desolations would follow. Remember, what we are looking at is the abomination of desolation. Let's go on. And he, that is the Messiah, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the offering to cease. Sacrifice, the daily sacrifice, the oblation, the services of the sanctuary, he will cause them to come to an end. And for the overspreading of what? Abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, or until everything is destroyed. And that which has been determined will be poured upon the thing that has been made desolate. So if you look at this passage, you can see abominations, desolations, the ending of the daily sacrifice, although we know sacrifice is a supplied word, the city and the sanctuary being destroyed. So you have all of these elements in these two verses. It is not referred to as the abomination of desolation. The phrase does not appear anywhere in these two verses. But the words are there, and I'm going to suggest to you that the concept is there. First of all, the sacrifice and the oblation, the services of the sanctuary come to an end. And then the city and the sanctuary are destroyed. And then he shall make it desolate. He who? Something causes the city to become desolate. And I believe it is Jesus who caused, or Jesus who pronounced that the city was desolate, even until it is destroyed, and the thing that is determined will be poured upon the desolate one. Now, I wanted to put these ideas first of all, and we're going to come back to them and examine them more closely. But see, I have the same passage here on the screen. It kind of feels a little easier when I read from the Bible. But I just highlighted the points that I want to focus on, which is the city and the sanctuary, desolations, the sacrifice and the oblation will cease, and the overspreading of abominations, he will make it desolate. You have some ideas here that we're going to build on a little bit more as we continue to study. But all of these elements are associated with the abomination of desolation. So, let's continue. This is the first place that we see in the book of Daniel where this is mentioned. And I believe this is what Jesus was referring to. Even though here it does not mention the phrase abomination of desolation, but everything is here in these two verses. So let's move on to the second place where it comes up, the second reference in the book of Daniel. And this time it is in Daniel chapter 8. And you will remember Daniel chapter 8, of course, because it's a chapter where it talks about, actually it comes up in sequence, it comes up before Daniel 9, but I put it at number 2. This is where you had the ram and the he-goat fighting, and you had the horn that became, and the goat became very great, And then you had the horn that came out of the four winds, and this horn became exceeding great. And what I want to point out is what this horn does. Look at what it says. It became great, even to the host of heaven. It cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. By him the daily, it says sacrifice. And as we know, we leave out the word sacrifice in this case because it is a supplied word. We're going to look at what this daily, remind ourselves of what this daily means. The daily was taken away and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. There you see again, it mentions the daily, the services of the sanctuary, and the place of the sanctuary was cast down. And a host or an army was given to this horn against the daily by reason of transgression, through apostasy, through transgression. It obtained an army that it was using against the daily. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Now, in verse 13, everything is brought together a little more cohesively, because I heard one saint, a holy person, an angel, speaking. And another angel said unto that certain angel which spake, How long shall be the vision? Which vision? Concerning the daily and the transgression of desolation. There's that word desolation. To give the sanctuary and the army, the host, to be trodden underfoot. So look at the elements that are here. There's a daily. There is the desolation, which is caused by transgression. And the consequence is that both the sanctuary and the host, the sanctuary and the army, are trodden underfoot. So you see the same elements there. You see the daily, you see the desolation, and you see the sanctuary. And all of these are taken away. So even though, again, it does not mention the abomination of desolation, instead of abomination, in this passage, it speaks about the transgression. But it has the same elements. The daily, the desolation, the sanctuary, and instead of abomination, it says transgression. But the elements are there. So you see that this is the second incident in the book of Daniel where it is mentioned. Now the third place is where probably the phrase comes up. And the third reference is in Daniel 11 and verse 31. And you have everything very simply put in this verse. It says, And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. And they shall take away the daily. And they shall place the abomination that makes desolate. Now, just to look at this and to break it down, we could go back and look at the other two references, but I think you probably should remember what was said in the other two references. What I want to point out here is that, okay, look at the picture we have. First of all, whoever the he is, this is what he will do. Let me see if I can use a different color. This is what he will do. He first of all pollutes the sanctuary. He pollutes the sanctuary. And a part of that process is he takes away the daily. And the second thing he does is he places an abomination. And the result of that abomination is that things become desolate. What do we mean by desolate? I'm going to discuss that as well. But just look at the sequence. Number one, the sanctuary is polluted. And the daily is taken away. And instead they put something that is called an abomination. And this abomination results in desolation. It makes desolate. Whatever the abomination is, when it is introduced, It takes the place of the daily and it makes desolate. So we'll look at what desolate means in just a moment. But clearly what we see here is that something very negative, something hateful to God, replaces something that is good. And the result is that it causes desolation. Now, let's move on. Let's move on. Let me get rid of these highlights. Just to highlight the elements of the prophecy, which I just did, but just to remind us. Number 1, the sanctuary is polluted. Number 2, the daily is taken away. Number 3, an abomination is set up. And number 4, desolation follows. Oh, I just wanted to point out that in this reference here in Daniel chapter 8, instead of abomination, it spoke about transgression. Transgression of desolation. And over in Daniel chapter 11, in chapter 11, it doesn't mention transgression. Instead it mentions abomination. So you will notice that the phrase abomination of desolation, it is not in the book of Daniel at all. This is the closest thing we have to it. Jesus rephrased it a little when he said, when you see the abomination of desolation. But abomination of desolation does not appear in the book of Daniel. What we see in the book of Daniel is the abomination that maketh desolate, or that causes desolation. So whatever this abomination is, it is something that causes desolation. I'm coming back to the list, Sister Jessica. But the abomination of desolation that Jesus spoke about is the same as the abomination that causes desolation. That's what the word really means. There's an abomination and it results in desolation. So let's bear that in mind. So let me go back to that list. It's number 1, the sanctuary is polluted. Number 2, the daily is taken away. Number 3, an abomination is set up. And the result is desolation. All right, so the prominence that this is given in the book of Daniel and also in the statement of Jesus makes us understand that it is something very significant. So how did Jesus apply it? I want to look at what Jesus said about it, because this begins to give us a clue how we should understand it. There are 3 places in the Bible where the statement of Jesus is recorded. One of them is Matthew 24, the other one is Mark chapter 13, and the other one is Luke 21. And in each place, the words of Jesus are quoted a little differently. Each writer says it a little differently. I don't know if he said all of these things and they just remembered a little part each. But anyway, when you put the 3 things together, you get a more complete picture. First of all, there's the one that we spoke about in Matthew 24. He said, you would see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, and it would stand in the holy place. Now remember, from what we saw in Daniel, it is the abomination that causes desolation. So an abomination would stand in the holy place. And that's where Jesus says, whoever reads, you need to understand. Something abominable would stand in the holy place. And when he talks about the holy place, where is that? Well, somebody would say that the holy place is the first apartment of the sanctuary. That was specifically called the holy place. But in this case, we will see it is not talking about that. That's not what Jesus means. In the book of Mark, this is how he puts it. In Mark 13 and verse 14. But when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, now it changes a little bit. Standing where it ought not. So according to Matthew, Jesus said this thing would be standing in the holy place. But according to Mark, what he said was it would stand where it's not supposed to stand. So, in a way, it's going to be in a holy place. But we get some more information because we see it's a holy place. It's somewhere it should not stand. It should not be. And that place will be regarded as a holy place. It could be in the first apartment of the sanctuary. But the next reference is going to show us that this is not what it means at all. So, the next reference is found in the book of Luke. And it's in Luke 21, verses 20 to 21. And Luke tells us kind of very clearly now. Jesus says, when you shall see Jerusalem surrounded with armies. How do we know it is the same place? Because Luke is telling the same account of where Jesus is talking to his disciples on the mountain. And look at how he ends up. When you see this, then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. Now, according to Matthew and according to Mark, when were you to flee to the mountains? It was when you saw the abomination of desolation set up. Luke says the same thing. You are to flee to the mountains. But when? When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies. So these three verses, these three passages, when you put them together, you get to understand that the holy place is around Jerusalem, where the armies, when the armies came to surround Jerusalem and they stood in that holy place around the city, then that was the abomination of desolation standing where it was not supposed to stand. Specifically, Jesus made it very clear. He says, when you see Jerusalem, the word compass, it means surrounded, encircled. When you see Jerusalem encircled by armies, that was the sign to get out of the city. And of course, probably all of us understand that this happened when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, or it happened before they destroyed Jerusalem, in AD 66, first of all, to remind us of what happened. In the year AD 66, the Roman armies, led by a man named Cestius, they came to attack Jerusalem, and they came to besiege the city and to conquer the Jews. But I see your hand, Brother Ian. Give me a second. They came to conquer Jerusalem, but just as they were about to attack Jerusalem, they came and they surrounded the city, kind of like what you see in this image here. But this image is the actual attack. But before they attacked, they first of all surrounded the city. Now, Jesus had said, when you see Jerusalem surrounded with armies, then you are to flee. And you might wonder, how were they to flee if the city was surrounded by armies? But the word of God is unfailing. And what happened is that they surrounded the city, and then something happened back in Rome. I think there was some kind of rebellion that took place in Rome, and it required the Roman armies to withdraw. And so they surrounded Jerusalem, and then they got the news, and they withdrew. They drew back, and it cleared the way for the Christians to get out of Jerusalem. And Jesus had told them it was so urgent, don't go back to take anything out of your house. Just flee immediately. What happened is that when the Jews saw the Romans withdrawing, they were sure that God was fighting for them. And they came out of the city and they attacked the rear of the Roman army with great vigor. And actually they killed a lot of the Romans, and the Romans had a great difficulty in withdrawing. And so for 4 years, it was actually 3 or 4 years later before they came back. But of course, by that time, every Christian was long gone. They obeyed the words of Christ and they left the city. And so when the Romans came back and destroyed the city as we see here, by that time they were gone. Now, just before Brother Ian speaks, if you look at this image, you will see Prominent in the picture, right to the left, you see one of the Roman flags. You see a couple of the Roman flags. Now, the Roman flag was a symbol of the supremacy of Rome, but it was also a symbol of the supremacy of the Roman gods. So these banners are these ensigns. They were usually engraved or decorated with tokens and symbols of their gods. And so, very literally, for an idol or an idolatrous symbol to be set up in the ground around Jerusalem was what constituted an abomination, standing where it ought not. It was not supposed to happen in the precincts of the holy city. So the fact that these heathen insignias were able to come into the ground surrounding the city was what was referred to as an abomination. We're going to look more closely at it in just a moment, but let me just pause and allow Brother Ian to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point before I actually get the chance to speak, because I am seeing, based on all that you have presented so far, that there's a difference between the abomination and the desolations. Those two are separate things. You are now making the point that the insignia or the banners of the Roman army on the grounds or surrounding the grounds of Jerusalem is an abomination that makes desolate. But I'm thinking that maybe this abomination that caused this desolation are in two different places. What if the Jews had done something abominable that caused this desolation to come upon them? I'm looking at that from that perspective. What they have done with them, their own system, with what they have done to Christ, the Christians and everything, that has caused that abomination that now caused this desolation to take place. That's what I'm looking at.
Okay, yes, and I'm going to comment on that. What we have to bear in mind also is that there's a principle of type and antitype. I think most of us understand that. Or I could say there's a principle of secondary fulfillment and primary fulfillment. Now, I believe what happened to Jerusalem was a secondary fulfillment. It was almost a type. The real abomination of desolation, I believe, applies to the end of time. Now, this is my own opinion, and I'm going to explain why I think so. So I think that the abomination of desolation that Jesus spoke about was more of a physical thing, and the abomination of desolation at the end will be more of a spiritual thing. I'll explain why, but I'll show you why I think it's more physical in the first instance. There are a couple of things that happened in this first fulfillment in the time of Jesus. The sanctuary that was destroyed was a literal sanctuary. The ending of the sacrifices was literal, and it actually happened 30-something years before when Jesus died. The sacrifices were supposed to have come to an end. They didn't really. But it was from that time that the city was made desolate, because Jesus himself said, and I'll show you the verse, Jesus himself said that the city was left desolate. He used the very word desolate, and it was because of their behavior, as you are pointing out, that the city was left desolate. But the consequence was that 30-something years later, the Romans came and they set up a literal symbol of abomination. The Roman flags and the Roman idolatrous symbols, they set it up actually in the walls surrounding the city, and in the ground surrounding the city, and then it was followed by the destruction of the sanctuary and the city. All of these are a part of the abomination of desolation, but it was very literal in the time of Jesus. Later on, we're going to see where it is not so literal, but the principles are the same. Sister Elizabeth, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I agree the physical versus the spiritual. And knowing that we're spiritual beings, I believe in the dual application, that it was physical, it was external, now it's internal. The holy place is where God is. It's where God is. And if that's the case, then since the abomination of desolation was external, could it not be internal this time? Meaning, the decision you make for God sets you in a safe place and causes the abomination, which causes desolation, um, which means uninhabitable. So God will no longer inhabit your body since He dwells in us in this end time. So He will no longer inhabit because you have made a conscious decision, knowing what the consequences was. You made the decision anyways, which caused Him to leave you and never return because you have made your decision. Like they're being polarized. People now are being polarized into two separate groups.
All right. That's a very appealing interpretation. There are some obstructions to that particular interpretation, but since I'm going to come to it, I will reserve my comments until I get to that point. So it's an appealing interpretation and it has merit, but there are some obstructions which disqualify that interpretation, which I will explain a little bit. Um, Sister Talia, go ahead.
Thank you, Brother David. I just want to say I really like the photo, or the picture. Is this a picture? And can I get that picture? Can you send me that picture?
I'll do that, Sister Talia. I'll
Because
do it at the end of the meeting.
the flag of the Roman Empire, as you had stated prior, that it was set into place. That was what the Christians saw, that it the second time around, that it gave them an opportunity to flee.
But
And this is what I thought.
I must warn you, Sister Talia. It was this picture was drawn by your enemy.
Oh, I know. I know,
So
but it's a great
you will
picture.
have to submit to AI this time.
Oh gosh, but I figured as much. Uh,
Okay.
but and I get it, but you know what? It's a great way to to that evangelize um uh Jews here, because
Sure. All
there's a
right.
lot coming into the
All right.
vicinity.
Just good to see that you can bend sometimes.
Thank
All
you.
right. Let's continue. Um, so these are the elements of this abomination of desolation. Jesus said it would stand in the holy place. He said it would stand where it ought not, and he said it would consist of Jerusalem being surrounded by armies. So I want to point out also that what we are looking at is the actual destruction of Jerusalem. But Jesus' statement did not apply to the destruction of Jerusalem. The abomination of desolation that Jesus mentioned was not the actual destruction. Remember, the Roman armies came first of all and they surrounded the city. They did not enter the city. They did not destroy the temple at that time. They surrounded the city, and when they surrounded the city, they withdrew, and opportunity was there for God's people to escape. So the abomination of desolation is not when they attacked the temple. It's not when they invaded the city. It's when they surrounded the city and came close to it. That was the abomination of desolation, standing in the holy place. And I want to make that point because I don't want us to think that it was the actual destruction of Jerusalem that was the abomination. It was the approach of the Roman idols and surrounding the city. That was the abomination of desolation. Then there was a pullback, because if there was not the pullback, God's people could not have escaped. I want to make that distinction very clear. All right? Now, here's where Jesus says that the place was left desolate. And as I said, this was like 36 years before. In Matthew 23, verse 37 to 38, Jesus says, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, How often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and you would not? Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. The word desolate, we are going to look at what that means. But Jesus himself said that desolation had come upon the house, upon Jerusalem, upon Judea, upon the Jews. And the reason was that they would not yield themselves to him. They had alienated themselves from God. It was in this context, the very next chapter, Jesus said to them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another. That was when the city was left desolate, and the consequence of it was that it was destroyed along with the sanctuary. These are the elements of the abomination of desolation. So, just to review quickly, Jesus' death put an end to the daily. That is the sacrifices and the offerings. The city and the sanctuary were left desolate. That is, they were forsaken by God. And thirdly, the abomination of desolation followed, which was Rome's approach to the city first of all, followed by the destruction of the sanctuary and the city. These are the elements that we can see. Now, we're going to do a quick review of what the daily means. Then we look at what the abomination means. Then we look at what the desolation means. Then we try to bring everything together in the context of our time and our day. What does the daily mean? This is a review. We have been through this already. All of you will remember that this word, the daily, is taken from a Hebrew word. And I think everybody knows what the word is. Let me try to see if I can scribble it here. That word is the word T-A-M. What comes next?
Tamid.
Tamid.
Tamid. And it means okay, the word means the continual, the perpetual. Words that are used, it is translated as always, continually, perpetually, and in this case it is referred to as daily. Now we're going to look at, I want to remind you of how the word is used in the Bible so we can get a clearer picture. The first place it is used in the Bible, the first place, is in Exodus 25 verse 30, where God says, you shall set upon the table showbread before me, always. This word always is the word tamid. Same word that is translated as daily. Next place it is used, okay, and here's a picture of what it refers to. The showbread, God said it was to be upon the table before him always, continually. It was never there. It was never to be allowed to be missing from the sanctuary. The second place it is used is Exodus 27 and verse 20. And thou shalt command the children of Israel that they bring thee pure oil olive beaten for the light, to cause the lamp to burn always. Same word, tamid. Daily, continually, perpetually. Same thing. Same word. So the first two places that this word is used in the entire Bible, it is referring to the service of the sanctuary. The ministry of the bread, which you know represents the word of God. The ministry of the oil, the light, which represents the work of the Holy Spirit. Let's proceed. All right, just to highlight that, another picture showing you the candlestick, the light. The third place it is, well, this is not the third place it is used, but I put it here because it applies to the same sanctuary ministry. And when Aaron lighted the lamps at even, he shall burn incense upon it for a perpetual incense. No prizes for guessing what is the word that is translated perpetual. A perpetual incense before the Lord throughout your generations. The word is tamid again. And always, a perpetual, a daily incense. The word simply means a continuous thing, right? Showbread continuously. The lamp to burn continuously. Incense upon it continually before the Lord throughout your generations. It means something that continues and does not stop. That's the meaning of the word tamid. He goes on again, and okay, we have a picture of the incense. Yes, okay, I got it this time. The altar of incense. These things were all a part of this sanctuary, this apartment of the sanctuary. It was where the priest would minister the bread, the altar, and the candlestick. And then one more place. Well, it's the same thing. The fire shall ever be burning upon the altar. Same word, tamid. The fire shall tamid be burning upon the altar. It shall never go out. That's the meaning of tamid. Something that never stops, something that never ends. And what we can see, if you go to the Bible, if you turn on the Hebrew or the Greek, the Hebrew, if you have a Bible that has this, and you look for the word tamid, you will see that in the Bible over and over from the start where the word first appears, probably almost entirely through the book of Exodus and Leviticus, it always refers to the ministry of the sanctuary. So when you come to the book of Daniel, and it is translated as daily, and it's the only place it's translated as daily, then it cannot mean anything other than what it means here, which means the services of the sanctuary. That's what the word actually is pointing to. Another couple of places. Now this is that which thou shalt offer upon the altar, 2 lambs of the first year, day by day, continually. So the sacrifices also were to be continually. So that's one of the reasons why they probably put daily sacrifice. But they omit the showbread, the candlestick, and the altar, and they focus only on the sacrifice. It was not the sacrifice, it was the entire sanctuary service that was highlighted. And then finally, the final place where we have it, or where I want to highlight, it says, Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart, when he goes in unto the holy place for a memorial before the Lord, continually, same word, tamid. So, the point I'm really making is that this word, tamid, clearly refers to the ministry of the priest in the sanctuary. The killing of the lambs, morning and evening. The priest carries the breastplate, wears it on his chest continually every day. The ministry of the showbread, the olive oil, the incense, the fire on the altar, everything has to do with the ministry of the sanctuary. So the daily really refers to the ministry of the sanctuary. And this is what we see when we actually go to the book of Daniel. He will take away the daily. Whatever we want to interpret this daily as, it has to do with the ministry in the sanctuary. And so, when Jesus died, he put an end to the ministry of the sanctuary. The earthly sanctuary had no more meaning, even though the Jews continued to worship in that way until the Romans finally came and destroyed the city and their sanctuary and completely abolished that system. So yes, here's an image of the priest with the breastplate and carrying out the services of the sanctuary. So let's clarify the meaning of this word abomination. And at one point I was pretty focused on a certain thing, and I'm not going to eliminate it, but I'm not going to be as insistent on it as I was at one time. The meaning of abomination. So we go to the Bible, and this word appears in the Bible. And I like to look at, where does it first appear? Well, the first time it appears, it doesn't have any meaning for us, because first time the word comes up, the Bible says that every shepherd was an abomination to the Egyptians. The Egyptians considered shepherds and sheep to be an abomination. So when the sons of Jacob went down to Egypt, they could not stay near the Egyptians because the Egyptians considered them to be abomination, so they had to go and live in the land of Goshen. So the word abomination, the first few times it appears, it has to do with people's prejudices against other people. It doesn't mean anything. But the first time God actually uses the word and tells you that something is an abomination, we're going to look at that now. First time in the Bible that the word is used to refer to something that God hates and objects to. I'm not going to look at every instance, but I'm going to look at the first few times. First place is in Leviticus 18, verses 22 and 23. And even though it is very graphic, it's the Bible. It says, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination." That's the first place that God identifies something in the Bible that he says is an abomination. You can look it up yourself. Everywhere that the word appears before that, maybe one or two times, it has to do with the Egyptians considering the Hebrews to be an abomination or something like that. It goes on to say, "Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself therewith. Neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down thereto. It is confusion." All right, so this first prohibition, where God expresses something that is abominable, has to do with sexual perversion. The word is actually used specifically to refer to homosexual activity. But it's connected to people having sex with animals. But in this case, God refers to it as confusion. It's interesting that he says, this is confusion. It carries the same penalty. These people were supposed to be stoned to death. He said it is confusion, but when it comes to the man lying with man, he calls it an abomination. Just a matter of interest, okay? But that's the first place that God mentions it. And he goes on, in that's Leviticus 18, 22 to 23. Then in chapter 20, he comes back and he says the same thing. In verse 13, "If a man also lie with mankind as he lieth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them." Now, I am remembering that a lot of what you read in the Old Testament is like a type. It's a symbol. And when you come to the New Testament, you probably need to interpret it in a spiritual way. I'm aware of this. And I have it in the back of my mind. But what I know is that this is the first place in the Bible where God ever highlighted some kind of behavior and said it is an abomination. The word is actually used. And that is interesting and something we have to consider. Now, he also highlights something else that I want to point out. And this is highlighted, it's given actual similar prominence in the law. And here's what he said, Deuteronomy 7:25 to 26. "The graven images of their gods shall you burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver or gold that is on them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein, for it is an abomination to the Lord thy God." And you all will remember the man named Achan. He saw a goodly Babylonish garment and a piece of Babylonish gold, and he took them and hid them in his tent. He did exactly what God had said he should not do. You should not desire the silver or the gold that is on them. It is an abomination to the Lord thy God. "Neither shalt thou bring an abomination into thine house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. But thou shalt utterly detest it, and thou shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing." And you remember that it says that Achan took the cursed thing because he took this Babylonish garment and this Babylonish gold and hid it in the floor of his tent. So God refers to this as an abomination also. Idolatry. Embracing idolatry and embracing the silver and the gold that is connected to idolatry. God says it is a cursed thing and it is an abomination. And people who did it, well, it doesn't say here that they should be stoned to death, but that's what actually happened to Achan. So, these are the two things that I see highlighted most of all. There are other things that the word abomination is connected to, but these are the two that are most highlighted in the law of Moses, in the law that was given to Moses. And this is where we see these things first of all highlighted in the Bible. So when you read the phrase, the abomination of desolation, it is not strange if your mind goes back to what was written in the type, in the law, because you might be able to find some clues there. All right. What does desolation mean? We saw daily, and then we saw abomination. What does desolation mean? In Leviticus 26, verses 31 and 32, I'll read just a few places because this word appears over and over in the Bible, and it's not hard to pick up what it is implying. And I will make your cities waste, and bring your sanctuaries into desolation. And I will not smell the savor of your sweet odors. I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it. All right, again, it says, and Joshua burnt Ai. Joshua 8, verse 28. Joshua burnt Ai. Every time I read Ai, I'm thinking of artificial intelligence. And Joshua burnt Ai, and it made an heap forever, even a desolation unto this day. When it says Ai was made a desolation, it means it was utterly destroyed, utterly uninhabited, utterly forsaken. Nobody had anything to do with it again. That's the meaning of this word desolation. And let's just look at a few other instances. In Jeremiah 25 and verse 11 it says, and this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And what it means is that the land of Israel, the land of Judea, was abandoned and uninhabited for 70 years. The people that belonged to the land were taken away from Judea and they were taken to Babylon. And the place became a desolation. So the word desolation really means a condition where it is abandoned and it is left to go to waste. And it is destroyed. Now I'm going to bring in something which maybe I shouldn't bring in. I'm going to bring it in. I should have made this wait till last because I know it's going to provoke maybe argument and discussion. But it's just something that I am going to put in here because I find it interesting, even though I'm not going to bring it into my study this evening. All right? And if you have anything to say about this, leave it until the end of the study. Because I'm just dropping it in because it's an interesting little statement where Paul said that the coming of Jesus would not come until there comes a falling away first, and the man of sin would be revealed, the son of perdition, who would oppose and exalt himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. It seems to me that this is some kind of abomination based on idolatry of a human being. But it says something interesting. And now you know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. This is a very striking phrase because what it means is there's somebody who is preventing this abomination. Somebody was preventing this abomination of this man coming. And the person who was preventing it, I think this was the Holy Spirit, he would continue to prevent it. The word let, Old English. He who now letteth, he who now prevents, will let or will prevent until he, whoever is preventing it, which is Jesus, the Holy Spirit, until he is taken out of the way. And when I was reading it, it suggested to my mind, here is the daily, the ministry of Christ. And as long as this daily or this continual is taking place, this abomination could not be set up. But it says, until he be taken out of the way. Jesus' ministry in the sanctuary would be taken away. Jesus' ministry in the sanctuary would be taken away. And when that ministry was taken away, then that man of sin would be able to appear. And what it means, what I understand is that the work of the Holy Spirit in the Christian church was brought to an end. If you look at it historically, what happened was that, you know, the great power that was with the apostolic church, but in no time at all, the presence of the apostasy in the early church caused it stifled the work of the Spirit of Christ. And the Apostle Paul spoke about it when he said, the mystery of iniquity is already working. But somebody was preventing it. And the one who was preventing it was Christ in the church. But then, as we have seen, the daily would be taken away. The work of Christ would be obstructed. And when that happened, it opened the way for this man of sin to be revealed. But anyway, like I said, if you have any comments on this, leave it until the end, because this is not a part of our study this evening. Like I said, I should have left it out. But anyway, so when was this abomination of desolation fulfilled? We're going to look at two fulfillments. One of them was the first one that we are sure about. It is at the time when Jerusalem, literal Jerusalem, was destroyed. But I'm saying to you that there is an end time fulfillment. So we're going to look for the elements and try to match them. So first of all, in the first century, and then the end of time. So in the first century,
are we going to be looking for the abomination that causes desolation, or are we going to look for the abomination of desolation? Because it's kind of, I think it's becoming two separate things in my mind.
Well, there's no such
causes desolation.
Jesus says, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, and Daniel never spoke about the abomination of desolation. He spoke about the abomination that causes desolation.
So we're going to be focusing on the abomination then. We know what it's going to cause, but are we trying to identify the abomination?
Well, both things, right? The abomination that causes and then desolation. Okay. Because the abomination of desolation, I don't know what that means. So I'm not going to comment on that, because although Jesus said abomination of desolation, when you go back to Daniel, what you see is an abomination causing desolation.
To me, it's the same thing. It's just a way of saying it.
All right, fine. So I'm sticking with the one that is easier for me to focus on, to understand.
Okay.
Because I can understand causes, but of is more obscure.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first thing is the enemy. Let's understand who the enemy is. In the first century, the enemy was empirical Rome. At the end of time, the enemy is the beast. So we can match those. There is a similar enemy at the time when the abomination of desolation comes up. In the time that Jesus spoke about the first fulfillment, it was the empire of Rome. Now we believe that at the end of time it is also the same Rome, but Rome remodeled. Rome comes back in the last days as the beast that comes from the pit. This is the enemy at the end of time. It's the beast, and finally the final incarnation will be the beast that comes from the bottomless pit. We have an enemy, they had an enemy. It's similar. In the past, the enemy was more identifiable because the empire of Rome was very easy to discern. But anyway, there was also, in the time of Jesus, or in the time of the early church, there was a religious enemy. And everybody knows that this is the Jews, or apostate Judaism. The Jews became the determined and the dedicated enemies of the early Christians. Now, if you follow through on this and you think about it in a simple, straightforward way, you would say, all right, who is the equivalent of apostate Judaism in our day? And I think the simple answer would be, it's apostate Christianity.
Babylon.
Yes, or Babylon, right. Those who say they are Jews but are not, they do lie. Remember that we today are spiritual Jews. So we're looking at things in a spiritual sense. So spiritual Jews are Christians. But you have those who say they are Jews, they say they are spiritual Jews, but they are not, they do lie. This is apostate Christianity. And one thing I want you to notice is that apostate Judaism was the institutionalized religious body. This was the institution. All right, it was It was the structured form of what was called God's people. And today, I believe it is very similar. Apostate Christianity is structured Christianity, or if I may put it another way, it is denominational Christianity. Brother Ian referred to it as Babylon. Yes, that absolutely is the main part of it. It's denomination. It's institutionalized religion. It is denominated Christianity. Apostate Judaism became friendly with Rome, right? Even though Rome was their enemy, but they joined with Rome in trying to destroy the Christians. They sold Jesus to the Romans. They got the Romans to attack the Christians at every chance they got. And the same thing happens at the end, because the woman is riding the beast. They are friends, the beast and the woman. They are paramours, they are lovers, from what we can see in the Bible. So the religious enemy, you have an equivalent in the first century and the last century. Who are the people of God? Yes,
Before we move on from that, don't don't forget to mention that in both cases, the empirical, the political power eventually turn around and destroy the very religious system that went against Christianity, and it's prophesied to happen in the end as well. That the
I'm going to come
beast
to
and the
it.
10 nations.
I'm going to come to it.
Okay.
I'm going to come to it. The people of God in the first century was the apostolic church. And the apostolic church was not the organized body. They were the people who met in home churches, and they met in little communities. They had no institution that governed them. They began to develop into some kind of institution when they had the Council of Jerusalem. They apparently set up some kind of guiding body, but they were very primitive and not very structured and organized. And that was one of the blessings in that early church. And at the end of time, the people of God, the true people of God, are described as a remnant. They're not the ones who are involved in denominated Christianity. They're the people who are outside of that body. The daily taken away. What is the daily taken away? Well, in the first century, it was the sanctuary service came to an end. But in our day, we don't have the sanctuary service literally anymore. What we have today is an understanding of Christ's work in the sanctuary on our behalf. And it's an understanding of Christ's work in not just in the heaven sanctuary, but in the church sanctuary. Now this is where I'm going to comment on what Sister Elizabeth said, because Sister Elizabeth said that your body is a temple, Christ works on the inside, and that is absolutely true. But I find that a lot of Christians, they either forget or they ignore that the church, the Christian church, is also described as a sanctuary in the Bible. And so because of that, a lot of the interpretations that we get, they are focusing only on your body is the temple, and they are not remembering that the church is the temple. Because I think many of these prophecies are focusing on the church instead of the individual, and I'll explain why. If we actually go back to the statement that Paul made in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, look at what he says. He says that the man of sin opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God is sitting in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Now, if we don't remember that the Christian church is a temple, we would have to say that this man of sin is sitting in the bodies of people. And what is the temple of God? Is it the bodies of unbelievers? The temple of God is a body of believers. And we could never accept the fact that there is some kind of man of sin, whatever that means. I don't know how a man could sit inside my body. That this man of sin would be sitting inside of Christians. That does not make sense. But the Christian church is the temple of God. And I'll show you where the Bible says that clearly. And what this is saying is that inside of the Christian church, a man would arise who takes on the prerogatives of God. Now this makes sense when you understand that the temple of God is the Christian church. And it's not referring to the building. It's not referring
Brother,
to the building.
Brother
Just a
David.
minute. 1 second, Sister Elizabeth. The Christian church is not referring to the building, and if we say this, that would be a great mistake. The Christian church is the body of believers. I'll just read this before you speak, Sister Elizabeth. And in Ephesians chapter 2, I wanted to look at what Paul says here with regard to this. It says, "Now therefore you are no more strangers and foreigners, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God. You are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building here of the Christian church, fitly framed together, groweth unto an holy temple in the Lord, in whom you also are builded together for an habitation of God through the Spirit." Go ahead, Sister Elizabeth.
Okay, understand what I'm going to give you that whole thought of what I was thinking. I just gave you a portion of it. Every human, I don't even like that word, knowing what it is. Every man or woman is coming to an understanding individually. The ones that come and the ones that are surrendered to God has unlearned, relearned the truth, walk in what they understand, comes to be a unit. Say, for instance, this whole platform is sold out to God, surrendered to God. I know that we are church, but collectively we are the church. I understand that, but it's going to be a group of collective people making that decision for God, which makes it a church. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. As a
Sure.
whole, not we
Uh,
we still individually have to make the decision.
sure. The reason I made the comment is because the abomination of desolation cannot stand in an individual. It has to stand in an institution. That's what I'm saying. Because if the when Jesus says, when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it should not, everybody's eyes has to be on a certain place, on a certain thing. And when it happens, everybody knows that this is a mark. If you, for example, were to embrace the abomination of desolation, we would not see that as a mark to flee anywhere. If you see me embracing something that you think is the abomination of desolation, that is not a sign to the world or to the church. It has to be something recognizable that happens out there in an institutionalized way that we see. Like Jerusalem was a place they could see with their eyes and they could identify something. Everybody could see it. And when it happens again, it happens in the Christian church, because the equivalent of the temple, the equivalent of the Jewish system is the Christian church. Apostate Judaism in the first century was regarded as the public face of God's people, even though it was actually the apostolic church that was truly God's people. But you had two things there that claimed to belong to God. One of them was the apostate Judaism, and the other one was the true Christian church. Both of them claimed to be worshiping Jehovah. And in the same way today, you have apostate Christianity that claims to be worshiping Christ, claims to be in the service of Christ. And then you have the remnant that has not fully appeared yet, but the remnant is the true people of Christ. So you have both things together. And so the daily taken away is the sanctuary service ended in the day of Jesus. And in our time, it is the Spirit of Christ. It is Christ leaving the churches. I see you, Sister Susan. Let me just finish making this point. So, the sanctuary service represented the service by the priests in the sanctuary itself. Now, Jesus is our high priest, but the way Jesus ministers literally in the Christian church is through his Spirit. Now, for the ministry of Jesus to come to an end, it means that the Spirit is no longer able to work in Judaism or apostate Christianity. You see, in the past it was in the apostate Jewish church. In our time, it is apostate Christianity. The Spirit stops working in institutionalized Christianity, and that is the daily taken away. Sister Suzanne, go ahead.
So I just want, I need some clarification here. When I asked about this last Sabbath or the one before, I was wondering whether or not the abomination of desolation was the same as the mark of the beast, because the abomination of desolation is not mentioned as such in the book of Revelation. And I believe you said that they were the same. Okay, now if that's the case, does that mean that the mark of the beast is only applicable to Babylon, to apostate Christianity?
I'm going to clear it up, Sister Suzanne.
Thank you.
All right, I won't leave that out. And if I should by any perverted chance happen to leave it out, please, by all means, somebody catch me up. All right, so we come to the abomination of desolation now. All right, in the first century, the abomination of desolation was Rome's flag in the holy place. Now I want us to use equivalences here, right? The flag of Rome, it's the mark of empirical Rome. If you look at our list coming down, the mark of empirical Rome. This was the flag of Rome, standing where? In the holy place. Now look at this word holy place. Where did the flag of Rome stand? If you go back to my picture, where did the flag of Rome stand? It stood outside Jerusalem. It stood outside the camp of the Jews. Were the Jews then God's people? No, they were apostate Judaism. Was Jerusalem then a holy city? No, the Spirit of God had departed from there 30-something years before, when Jesus said, your house is left unto you desolate. But Jesus still referred to it as the holy place. Why does he call it the holy place? Because he's using the common terminology. Everybody referred to it as a holy place. So he's using the common terminology. And he says, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, it's no longer holy, but everybody still refers to it that way. So he's using the same argument. So when you see the mark of power of Rome standing in the church then, all right, in the holy place, Jerusalem, that was the abomination of desolation. So we want to do the same thing on this side. The mark from the beast. The beast is the equivalent of empirical Rome. The mark from the beast is going to stand where? In the holy place. What holy place? Something that appears to be God's people. It goes by the name of God's people, but it's not really God's people, but it is a popular concept that it is God's holy people. Thank you, my brother Claremont, I think it is. It's Christendom. It's in Christendom or in the Christian church. The mark of the beast, MOB stands for mark of the beast. I had to shorten it. The mark of the beast, Sister Suzanne, is set up inside the Christian churches. So the test of the mark of the beast comes to everybody. Like you said, it comes to you and to me. It's an individual thing. But at the same time, individuals receiving the mark or rejecting the mark is not a sign that everybody can see. The sign is that the mark or the abomination has to stand in somewhere that is considered the holy place. And what is considered the holy place is the Christian church. So when this mark of the beast is accepted in the Christian churches, the next thing that happened was that what action should the saints take? Well, in the time of Jesus, the saints were supposed to flee from Jerusalem. They were to get out of the city. So when the mark of the beast is set up in the Christian churches, what action do the saints take? It's the last chance to get out of the churches. Look at the picture. Everything matches perfectly. When you compare the first century to the last century, it's exactly what we expect when we consider all the evidence. You know, many times people ask, is it time to get out of the churches? And I usually say, if you are not comfortable, you should leave. Or if your voice has been silenced, and you have somewhere else to go, you should go. But I never say to anybody, you have to get out in order to safeguard yourself. Because according to the prophecy and according to the Bible, it is when the mark of the beast or the abomination of desolation is set up in the churches, in the holy place. That is the time you get out. Now, if you don't know what the mark of the beast is, if you don't know what the abomination of desolation is, you can't get out. And that's the thing. Many Christians have no idea what they are talking about, and so they will hang in there and they will become partakers of her sins and receive of her plagues.
You
All
have,
right,
you
I
have
see
me
quite.
Can
suspense,
I
Brother
ask a
David.
question?
Yes, yes, hold on. Let's do it in an orderly way. I see Sister Talia, then I see iPhone, then I see Sister Diane. Let's take them in that order.
It's I'm kind of stuck. God, a lot of God's people will still be stuck in that church because they're dormant. So won't, and I don't know, when that call comes, won't they flee at that time, or not even flee? Because in my thinking, Brother David, if the church is us, within us, the Holy Spirit within us, there will be God's people there because the wheat and tear will grow together. How
Until
that's
that time. Until that time, not
until
after.
that time. Yes, I get that. So they will come out though, right?
Of course, it says, Babylon
Okay.
is fallen, come out of her, my people, lest you
But
be
many will,
partakers of her sins and receive of her plagues.
my thing is, and I'm sorry to interject, that many will still be in there, but God, Christ, and in my heart will still be working on them, that some way or another they will be coming out.
Yes, at that point, but if they are there after that point, it means that they never belong to Christ.
So what is that point then? Are we talking when
It's
probation
it's
closes?
when the
And what does
mark
that
it's
mean?
it's when the mark of the beast is accepted by the churches.
What is the mark of the beast?
Aha! That's the $1 million question. I'm just going to make some general comments after the other people come make their point, and then I'll come back to this maybe for closing out.
I'm in suspense.
Well, you shouldn't be. On iPhone.
It's me, Venice. Sorry, I'm just using my
Okay.
phone.
Yes,
Sorry
Venice.
about that with driving. But I think Sister Talia has asked a question because I was looking at Revelation 18, verse 4, when the Lord was making the final call to his people to come out of her. I was just, wanting to find out if that would be equivalent to when the mark of the beast setting up. But
Absolutely,
anyway,
absolutely.
yeah, but Talia has already made mention of that. So I said, never
Okay.
mind.
All
Thanks.
right. Okay, Sister Di, go ahead.
And I was going to say that that Revelation 18 has to be, even though it comes after, it has to be before, because the calling out has to come, then the mark of the beast sets up.
Yes,
So even though it looks like it's after, Matthew 18 has to come before.
absolutely, Sister Di, because you can't have people in Babylon after the abomination of desolation has been
Right.
established.
And most people that are in Babylon are in all these false churches, whether it be Christendom, mostly Christendom, because they're the ones professing to know the true God, and they don't. But all of Babylon would include all those false religions.
Absolutely. So, to understand what the mark of the beast is, I'm going to be general in my statements. Okay? There are two things that we saw when we went back to the Bible and we looked at what God considers an abomination. He highlights two things.
Brother David, I see iPhone. Did that person speak?
Yes, that person spoke already, Sister
Thank
Talia.
you. Sorry, because his hands
Yeah.
up.
Um, there are two things that we highlighted in the book of Leviticus, and I think one was in Deuteronomy. But God highlighted one, the first thing he mentioned was homosexual behavior, followed by bestiality, and the third thing that was highlighted was idolatry, right? Idolatry and the love of the things of an idol, the gold and the silver of an idol. So God highlights certain things. Now, at one point, I was heavily leaning towards the idea that the mark of the beast has something to do with the homosexual agenda. And at the moment, I'm not going to say that I have changed my mind about this. Okay? I'm going to be more moderate in how I'm saying things, because I'm going to make allowance for other possibilities. Now, what is the mark of the beast? If you ask me that question directly, I will say, I don't know. But I can tell you this. It's going to be something that has to do with some idolatry against God that is vile to the point of causing great offense to God. Now, when you look at what is happening in the world today, one of the things that is perverting the human race is is a twisting of everything that is good that God created. And one of the main things is in the area of sex. Men becoming women, men marrying men, and generally, even though with the present administration in the US there has been a slowing down of the agenda, but it is something that has enveloped the entire planet. America is not the only country in the world. All the developed countries have embraced this sexual perversion in an extraordinary way. And the Christian churches, this is the point I'm making. If you look around the Christian churches, I mean, you can't say it is Sunday worship, because Sunday worship has been in Christendom from nearly 2,000 years now, and almost all of Christendom embrace Sunday worship. So that is not the abomination of desolation. That is not the sign for you to flee. Because if that is the sign to flee, it means that the probation of these churches were closed for hundreds of years ago. So it's not Sunday observance. But there's something, this sexual, I don't know what to call it, this turning upside down of the ways of God in everything that has to do with sex. They don't want to acknowledge that women are women anymore. They don't want to acknowledge that men are different anymore. And they come to the place where they don't respect the roles that God has given us in the church, men and women. They don't respect the fact that a woman cannot be a man and a man cannot be a woman. They don't respect the fact that God says for a man to lie with a man, it's an abomination. Priests in the Christian church are now accepted if they are homosexuals. Now, this is only in a few churches, but it's in some of the most popular and significant churches in Christendom. Now, I am looking, and I'm expecting, and listen to what I'm saying. This is a form of idolatry, and you know these are the two things that God hates, or that God called an abomination. Idolatry is one. Idolatry is when you put something before God in such an extreme way that God's way and God's opinion doesn't matter anymore. So it's a combination of both things. It's both idolatry and it's the grossest form of sexual perversion. Now, does it really have something to do with the mark of the beast? I don't know. But I have my eye on it, and I think it fits the bill. It fits the bill well, but we still have to see what happens. Now, when I am expecting that this is going to be pushed on all the Christian churches, maybe in the next administration in America, I don't know. But I'm going to tell you this. If this becomes the mark of the beast, you know the thing about the mark of the beast? I'm going to tell you something about the mark of the beast in case you never thought about it. I'm going to say it and then I'm going to explain why. Every Christian denomination will accept the mark of the beast. Everyone. Why? Because they will either accept it or they will cease to exist. What the Bible says is that if you do not receive the mark of the beast, you won't be able to do any business. You can't buy or sell. And eventually there's going to be a death sentence. Do you think the Adventist churches are going to be meeting on Sabbath if they resist the mark of the beast? You think they're going to be going to church every Sabbath? When it's a death sentence if you don't have the mark? When it's a death sentence, you think if there's a death sentence if you don't have the mark, you think the churches will be allowed to remain open? Or the Anglican or the Baptist or the Pentecostal or any church, you think any church will continue to function when this becomes a reality? So every denomination will bow to the mark of the beast or they will cease to exist. So every church, every church that functions publicly will receive the mark of the beast. That is something that something to think about, and that is why God's people will have to get out, because the churches are going to compromise. I'm telling you, according to the Bible, they're going to receive the mark, and that's why
Lord
every one
have
of them.
mercy, Brother David. Lord have mercy. You have to pray for these churches, man.
And for the people in
Gee,
them especially.
gosh.
That is why God's people, when they understand this, will have to understand that God's people in the last days will not be a denominated people. I think it's Brother Tony, to God be the glory, and then Sister Diane.
Yeah. Concerning the mark of the beast, does it have to be one specific thing? Couldn't it be something that, you know, we won't go along with the world's policies, especially in what the government here in America is trying to do? You know, they're trying to bring in this digital ID and getting rid of paper money, and they say before 2030 that people won't own anything. We'll have subscriptions to cars, homes, and all of this stuff. And if you don't go along with what they're doing, they can stop you from buying or selling. It's already happening over there in China,
I
you
understand,
know.
Brother Tony. The thing is, when something is vague and inconclusive, people don't know what to do. This is why, even though in the Garden of Eden, it was not so much about the fruit; it was about your relationship with God. But God made it focus on one single thing, because there is need that you can be able to see clearly where to take your position, and that people can see clearly what position you have taken. So, if it's a collection of things, then people are not certain of exactly what to do. Like, for example, one person might say, okay, I think there's nothing wrong with the digital ID. Somebody else might say, I think there is. And you go east and that person go left. And it's not decisive or definite. When God is using something to become a test, it's going to be something specific that nobody can be confused. So I'm pretty certain it's one thing in particular, Brother Tony.
But if you don't go along with what the government is doing, they can stop you from buying and selling.
Sure, but I mean, even today, there are some places in China, I understand, if your credit score is not good, they can stop you from being
Right,
citizens.
right,
And
right. I
I,
mean, it's people now that's homeless. They came and rent houses, rent apartments. They came and buy a loaf of bread because of just what you said. Because
at
they're
one at one time, if you were not vaccinated with the COVID vaccine, you could not fly, you couldn't travel. You couldn't go into a store and buy certain things. I went to the post office and they wouldn't give me my mail because I didn't have on a mask. So all kinds of rubbish happened. They stopped you from pretty much from buying and selling. But it wasn't the mark of the beast.
right, right, right.
So you have to have something definite that they have set out to stand up against something that God has instructed us in. Then you know that this is something that you're going to stand against the government in it. You
Brother
know.
David, Brother David, there are a lot of things that are against the
Hold on, Brother Ian. Let's do it orderly. I have to go with Sister Diane and then Samsung, then you.
Okay, sir.
Uh, Brother David, I was thinking the uh, the vaccine situation showed it was like we don't like to use that word, but it was like a prerequisite showing us because the churches, the denominations, one by one took a stand for this thing. And those members who didn't want to were ostracized in those denominations. So they had to make a stand outside of those churches. So that's giving us a prerequisite of what's going to happen. If they cave in this test, because it was a test for the world, and if they caved in this and people followed because their church told them so, that goes to show you that a lot of people are going to follow these denominations when this thing happened, because they look to these entities to tell them if this is what they should do or not. And then it was hard for them to critically think and stand up for themselves and make a decision outside, except a few. So when the call comes to come out of her, and that's going to be a call to all of everyone that's in Babylon. And when that call comes, it's only going to be a few that will have the courage to take a stand outside of what the church is saying, because the church will be telling them that this is okay. Whatever it is, they're going to say, go along with it.
Agreed, sister. Agreed. And it's they ultimately, I think there's an underlying thing behind the mark of the beast, of course, and it is a sense of loyalty to human governments instead of God. Remember what it says in Revelation 13, that the beast from the earth makes an image and commands everybody to worship the image. And worship of an idol is an abomination. So that's a part of the whole story. So this abomination, people express their loyalty to this system. So I agree with you that it has to do with, ultimately, the bottom line is, who do you worship? And many people end up worshiping the government. But at the same time, I also insist that the worship of the government will be centralized in a particular behavior. There'll be something that the government requires as a sign of worship. Like with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it wasn't just that you were to be loyal to Babylon. It was Babylon saying, I'm going to put you to the test. Now you have to bow to this image. There's a specific activity that will prove your loyalty. And if you don't carry out this activity, then I know that you're against my government. So it will
Right.
be something like that as well. There's a governmental requirement to demonstrate your loyalty to the state. So it will focus around worshiping the state, yes, but expressed through a particular activity.
Yes, Brother David. And they also use, the government said to the people, trust and believe the science. So they were setting science up as the image or the God. You got to in science. And so people start to trust the science, even though it was a lie because it's science, so it's falsely so called. But they do put something up in its place. They don't say worship me, the government, but they put something else up in its place to, yeah.
Yes. Okay, Sister Di. Samsung, I'm not sure who it is.
It's me, Brother Davis. Brother Davis, I'm wondering about if God is not in a society, right? Wouldn't that bring in adultery?
Well, I know that every time that paganism has become prominent, one of the outstanding marks is sexual licentiousness. Every time. And it's interesting to me that some of the people who are most prominent in pushing the sexual perversion are atheists. It follows as night follows day that when you reject God, whether through paganism or atheism, the most prominent characteristic seems to be sexual perversion. That's why I'm not leaving that idea that is in my mind, but I am waiting to see how things develop.
Okay, because when listening to you, I understand that when there's no God, sodomite comes in, adultery comes in, and these things goes directly against God. And according to how things go, especially in the United States of America, it's heading in that direction. Because if we don't have it in the schools, neither there is big it's not been taught in the university either. Because if you're a Christian and you go to university, by the time you finish, you start wondering if what you've been taught as a Christian, if it's true or false. So I don't know what to say. I'm just looking to see, what's the next direction they will be going in, because America's been since Trump came in, things has changed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not in the sense of going towards the homosexual part, but in another way of violence and control and dictatorship. So I'm wondering if that is part of the of heading in the direction of the mark of the beast too.
Sure. To be honest, where we are today, there are so many things that tell us we're at the very end of time. Some of the things that we expect, we don't see them developing the way we expect, and a lot of what we expect it is developing that way. So my own position is that we look at the Bible, see what the Bible says the best way we can, and form an understanding from what we see in the Bible. But at the same time now, we have our eyes open to see which direction things are going to go. We are not set in stone because we are not prophets, and we don't want to be false prophets. But we can study the Bible and look at the principles, which is what we are trying to do. Look at the principles and see what kind of developments we can expect to happen. That's the best we can do until we have God Himself tell us this is how it's going to be. But you see, because we understand the principles, as soon as something fits into place, it will go like click, click, click. We will see it clearly because we understand the principles. So, other than that, we're not going to understand anything until the Lord's time comes. That's what I think.
Thank you, brother David. And thank you for the Daniel series. I've learned a lot, and I'm still learning, and things are getting clearer to me nowadays. So, thanks again.
Okay, my brother. Praise the Lord. All right, brother Ian and then Sister Talia.
Yeah, I was just wanted to reemphasize the point you made that it has to be an abomination. It has to be something God considers an abomination. So all of these things, I see Brother Tony post in the chat say he don't think it had anything to do with sex. But it has to be something that it just causes God considers a great abomination to him. And like you said, in the Garden of Eden, the fruit was just a fruit. But it has to bring out what God sees as something rebellious against him. If you go against him to take the fruit, then that was the thing. In this case, it has to be an abomination. The mark of the beast is something that God considers a great abomination. And that's why can't believe it has to do with Sunday or Sabbath. It can be an issue of the day of worship where some people ignorantly do it. But when people begin to, Romans chapter 1 tells you when they refuse to acknowledge God in their lives and as a creator, they turn to do these things. So one thing leads to the other. I just wanted to make that point.
All right, thank you. And when we come to Revelation, we definitely will look at some of those principles a little more clearly. I mean, when I look at the whole world, I look at humanity in the physical realm, not in the spiritual, but in the physical realm. There's one thing that I see some people doing that are defacing the image of God, and that is the tattoos that they are putting on. Some people have turned themselves into monsters. Not a lot, but a few. You look at them and they are the embodiment of demons. But most people, they put tattoos all over. But apart from that, and even in a greater way, the only thing I can think of that is really deliberately, institutionally, globally setting out to destroy the image of God in humanity is the sexual perversions. That's what I can say. So maybe we can say, well, it's not going to be something physical. Maybe we can look at those things as well. But that's just a point to remember. It's not a small matter, and it is Satan's delight is to distort the image of God in man. Granted, it's a physical image, but it's important because Paul says the one who commits adultery is sinning against his own soul. It's an action that is not as simple as it seems to be. But anyway, Sister Talia, then Sister Diane.
I agree with you 100%, brother David, with regards to that, because you have and that's not where I was going, but I will make that point also. I mean, you have countries like, or if it's Holland, I know you've been out there. Parts of it you have where there are no laws against adultery and all kinds of sexual perversion. Is it Holland that
Holland.
I'm speaking to?
Yes,
Yeah, and
prostitution legalized.
all kinds of drama and stuff. But I point this out to agree with you because a lot of the festivals and its origins, and I will say such as Valentine's Day, there is a history and an origin behind that with lascivious sexual perversion, particularly with young adults and adults, for the way it was observed and practiced within the Roman cultures, or Babylon, let me say, Babylon's culture, whatever Babylon is and wherever Babylon is, because as you said, it's in the churches as well. Just the fact that women at women's ordination, it that becomes to me an abomination before the Lord our God. But there are several, as I can just point out to. But I do agree it has to be something so horrible that God will say enough is enough, and it is done.
Yes, thank you, Sister Talia. Sister Di, maybe you will have the last word. I don't see anybody after you.
All right, I was going to say the Alphabet Soup group also wants to be in the church. They also want to worship God, so that's an interesting, uh, for me, a phenomenon that you're in rebellion against the creator because you're going against his creation, but yet you still claim that you want to worship him. In Christianity, not just paganism. They don't just, which to me, some Christianity is pagan, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of going to straight paganism, they don't. They want to be in the Christian church and still do this. So I think that is kind of strange. And anything that the Most High Yah puts abomination on or express it as something as such has to be bad, because all sin is bad in his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's
Mm-hmm.
no lesser or smaller. Like if we look at sins in those degrees, he doesn't look at it like that. But there's something that he says is abominable.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's when he puts a woe on something, that means it's a serious matter when he says woe unto this. And yeah, so I just was
And
thinking about that.
that's a good point, Sister Diane. When all sins have the capacity to cause a person to be lost, sin is sin. All sin is an indication of a person separated from God. But God treats sin differently. There are some sins that He gave the death sentence for, and some sins they were to be separated from Israel, and some sins, they were to offer a sacrifice. And I asked myself at one point why, and I realized that some sins have a greater detrimental effect on humanity. Some things are so destructive to human society that God says if it rears its head, destroy it. That's why He wiped out Sodom. So it's not that the Sodomites were more wicked, it's that what they were practicing had the capacity to so pervert the people around them. The destructiveness of it was so great, God put a stop to it. So what you say is right, that some sins, even though all sins will cause you to lose your salvation if you embrace sin, but some are more destructive to the human race. And that's an important thing to remember. Sister
Because he
Suzanne?
said, wait, I'm sorry, because he says there's a sin that's unto death. And I don't
Yes,
say pray for that.
right,
There are some sins, yeah, pray for this, but there's that sin unto death, don't pray for it. So
exactly.
whatever that sin is unto death and whatever it is that's abominable are in the same category, I think.
Absolutely. Sister Suzanne, go ahead.
So forgive my ignorance in not having the knowledge level as probably most of people on this platform, but Sister Talia brought it up a few times, and it's something that also crossed my mind, but I'm going to leave it with you here. What is the possibility of the Trinity having something to do with this? And the reason why I ask is because we're called, like, people that are waking up to the deception of the Trinity are so few in number if you take into account how many Trinitarians there are. And those that are bringing the truth forward, for the most part, are thrown out of the churches that they once belonged to. And they're ostracized and stuff like that. And then there's Ezekiel 8 and 9, which Sister Jama brought up. And I remember thinking this about the Trinity like 2-3 years ago when I was reading that in Ezekiel. You know, is this talking about also in the end times, you know, God's people are going to be worshiping this, you know, the leaders are going to be leading God's people into worshiping a false God that they're not aware. I mean, the people are not aware is a false God, but the leaders are. So I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there because it has crossed my mind a few times.
Sure. Thank you, Sister Susan. It's a good question, and maybe the best way we can answer the question is to look at the type. So in the type, there was an issue between the false church and the true church, and the issue was, is Jesus the Son of God? Remember, the Jews rejected this, but the apostles accepted it. Now, the third party that brought the abomination of desolation was neither the Jews nor the Christians. It was the Romans. It was a third party. It was a secular power that brought this abomination and placed it in the precincts of Jerusalem. So the question of the Godhead, the Trinity, the Godhead, the truth about God, is a Christian question. It is relevant to us as Christians. If you're a Christian, it's relevant. But what we know is that 2/3 of the world is not Christian. Whether they are secular or they are other religions, they don't care about these arguments. Now, the mark of the beast is something that is going to bring the entire world to judgment, not just Christendom. Although it comes first to Christians, but it's the entire planet. So that's why I think that the mark of the beast or the abomination of desolation will be something that has relevance in every society. That's one of the reservations I have against the Sabbath as well, because the Sabbath question is nothing to atheists or to Hindus or even to Muslims. And you know, I think the question of human sexuality is a universal moral issue. No matter who you are, everybody knows, as long as you believe in some kind of creation, you know that there's a pattern and an order to creation. For you to pervert it the way the world is perverting it today, everybody on this planet knows that it is flying in the face of God. So it becomes something that is readily attest. So that's why I tend to lean in that direction, even though, as I said, I definitely am not set in stone, but it's just something to consider. So yeah, that's why I would say that as vital as the truth about God is, it's a question for Christians, and it only becomes relevant to people out there after they become Christians. Sister Talia and then Brother Ian.
So sorry, Brother David, but it's just a wonderful dialogue. Every religion, well, outside of certain Seventh-day Adventists or Seventh-day Sabbath keeping religions, they all have a Trinity model. They all have a Trinity model, meaning that, you know, it's either 3 heads, 3 this, 3 that, and they all have that model. So I just wanted to point that out because whether or not they call it a Trinity or not, they have it. If that can make any sense.
Yeah, China is 1 billion people, and the vast majority have no religion. They're atheists. And India is another billion people who are Hindus. Yes, they have some kind of Hindu triad, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, but you know, that in no way can be compared to the Christian. I mean, it's irrelevant. You can't go to a Hindu and say, and start an argument about if Jesus is the Son of God. Yeah,
I get it.
yeah. So that's what I was saying. It's kind of irrelevant to them. Mm-hmm. But Ian.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the prophecy of Jesus in Matthew about abomination that make of desolation where it ought not to. And my mind just rushed back to the Old Testament and thought of how many times did a foreign or a nation that were idolatrous nation has done the same thing. The Assyrians have done it. They have encircled Jerusalem. Babylon did it and overthrew Jerusalem. the Philistines came against them, like that kind of thing. That it happens so many times. I mean, in the Old Testament. Why is this one so significant?
Well, if you look at the book of Daniel, it's mentioned 3 times. And I made the point that I think it's different occasions, at least 2 different occasions. So it may not be that it is so unique. I guess you could say that when the Assyrians came against Israel, the 10 tribes, it was the abomination of desolation standing there. But there was no prophecy speaking about it, so nobody thought about it. But Daniel specifically mentions it, and Jesus highlighted it. And I think God is saying to us that history repeats itself. We're going to again see the same thing. So he highlighted it so we know to look out for something. Because if you understand the principle, it's easy to understand. Paganism, heathenism, something pertaining to Satan enters into what is considered God's people, comes in and sets up itself. God's people know what it means. So I think it really has become significant, not because it wasn't there before, but because this time God highlights it. Sister Di, I guess you get the last word.
So your word will be true, Brother David. I was thinking with the Elijah message and the first angel's message, when it references worshiping the true God, that means they're worshiping something else. We're saying whatever that mark of the beast is, they're worshiping. So we tell them, we don't fight over the issue. We tell them that they have to be worshiping the true God because they're worshiping something else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And with China, those people were forced into atheism because the way it came about. So if they truly are atheists, they still have a worship of something, whether it's self or their government or whatever it is, that they're still going to have to know that there is a God in heaven and he and his son are to be worshiped only. So the message of the first angel's message is the Elijah message of look at how many Muslims there are in number who are worshiping a false god. So that is a specific message to everybody that's worshiping something other than the true God. And that's the 2/3 of the world. And of course, then you get into Babylon with those who supposed to be worshiping the one true God and are not because they're worshiping the idol, Trinity. So that message is specifically to all of the world in that sense, because God is going to be the one worshiped in the end. And that's where our attention is to bring people to.
Agree. That's a part of the ministry of the remnant, to carry the message, fear God and give glory to him, to the whole world. So yes, the volumes, the multitudes of atheists, Hindus, Muslims, they will all come to hear the message, as amazing as that seems. But it will happen. And I mean, of course, the message is going to be carried under the pressure of the mark of the beast, or the abomination of desolation. So it will be interesting. But I have to say, thank you all for your participation. It was a very engaging evening, and I hope it was of benefit to everyone.